does everyday life look like as a creative person? I've been trying to figure this out for years. I've learned from some of the best who have been generous in sharing their habits and routines, their goals and systems. But ultimately, you have to build a sustainable life for yourself. So I'm sharing my system for creative success, as well as my theme and vision for 2025. This year's word or theme is dive. So deep dive, flow, concentration. Last year's word was ready, or all things are ready, which is an Emily Dickinson quote. I thought that was appropriate for 2024 since I wanted to launch YouTube, which happened, and do a few other things that I had existing on my mind as ideas but hadn't implemented them yet. So last year was more like breath and initiation, but this year is really digging into the things that matter to me. Here's my physical vision board. You might remember this from the room redecoration video. It's not that much different than the fall. I didn't see a need to redo it entirely for the new year. It's more of a vibe board, but there's a few goals on there, like 100,000 subscribers, so here's hoping. All right, it's the system for success. Now, I have to deeply acknowledge that this is based on the work of David Allen. A lot of people's creative systems seem to be, even if they put their own spin on it, and I'm no different. The basic principle of this 2001 book is that your brain is for having ideas, but not for keeping them. So in order to get things done, you have to record and implement ideas. Allen has a 5-step process that has mostly informed how I set up things in terms of having 5 of something. So they are capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. Now, my steps are basically rewordings and clarifications of these 5 principles, but I just find them more up-to-date and useful for my own life. So you might be inspired to create your own list based on either of these 2 lists or something similar. So my first principle is identify inputs, which is somehow step 0 of capture. Before you capture, you have to identify where you want to capture information from. So examples of this could be an email inbox, text messages, a camera roll, real-life conversations, phone calls, plus reverse engineering your goals. So that's good for this time of year. Making a big ol' list of inputs will help you know where to look. My second step is analog brain scan. This is actually a tool that Allen recommends. He calls it a mind map, but you might also see it as brain dump. I don't personally love the word dump, so I just prefer scan. But I also find it useful to get out a piece of paper and write everything down. Since so many of our inputs are digital, I find switching back and forth between analog and digital does something to shake up my brain so that along through this process, I remember things better. Dividing your life into broad categories can help this process too, so that you're not doing so many categorization and catch-up steps later on. Step 3 is a digital list. I've seen this called a master list, or it's just basically a huge to-do list. So pretty much everything that you want to do, you can put on there. Some people divide it up by spans of time. So something that is, this week, this month, this year. I generally just have a kind of running next few months set of goals, and sometimes I'll make paper to-do lists for the day or the week if it's getting like super cluttered, which is another example of switching back and forth between analog and digital just to activate my brain a bit better. Number 4 is schedule, presumably in a calendar. I use Google Calendar. You can use a bullet journal or paper calendar if that works better for you. But I find my schedule changes so much, I can't really write things down without just crossing things out all the time. So digital definitely makes more sense to me. There's a productivity guy saying that what gets scheduled gets done. That's certainly more likely than just vaguely having it float on a to-do list, but I find just magically scheduling something, especially if it's self-initiated, doesn't always work. So might want to pull out some more tips and tricks from other sources here, but if you can trust yourself to put it on a calendar and do it, definitely do it. which leads perfectly into get her done, step 5. I found engage is a little too Jean-Luc Picard. My phrase a little bit more East Coast millennial, but it's more or less the same thing. None of this matters if you're not working towards your goals, getting things done, pursuing your creative passions, and setting yourself up for success. As a lifelong organized person and graphic designer, I've definitely gotten lost in the weeds a couple times and gotten more infatuated with the process and the plan than the end result of the plan. But as long as you can see that as a possible sidetrack or weakness, you should be good. Just avoid that. There's 5 categories that I use to organize my life into my Google Calendar and my plan, which is currently in a Google Doc. Previously, it's been in Notion, Listography, a few other systems that people may or may not remember. I do have a plan to move it back into Notion, but I have purchased a complicated Notion system that I have not fully absorbed yet. So the notes are currently in Google, but that's all to say you can pretty much use whatever system is easiest and has the least amount of hurdles for you. So the categories are clients, creative, household, personal, and social. I got a minute to remember them in alphabetical order, but we got there. I've added 5 new categories because 5 originally wasn't enough, I guess. But it actually doesn't make things more complicated because they're all what previously would have been in personal. And they're mostly based on my personal activities, mostly media consumption, as well as one called movement, which is pretty much as you think, exercise and making efforts to not be sedentary. So you can see goals going into plan and schedule. Like I said earlier, you can reverse engineer goals to have very specific breakdowns and then carry them out. For my 2025 goals and resolutions, it makes sense to me to carry out developing the skills that I determined I wanted to develop in my Banff Creative Retreat. You'll see the video linked for that in the description. Here's the list again, but we've added quarters. So we're going to embrace 12-week goals instead of yearly goals. They seem a bit more manageable and chunkable. So we're going to do Q1 and 2 right now and leave the rest for, say, July. Skill number 1 is camera. So that's photo and video skills. For Q1, I want to learn Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm using Premiere Pro Rush, which is kind of the simplified version, but I want to get a little more fancy and in-depth. And for Q2, I use the DSLR Daily. That's my manual camera that I want to film more videos and take more photos with on the daily. Skill 2 is fitness. Not directly work related, but I think having more fitness in my life will help my work and focus. I'm going to join a downtown fitness center, and that will hopefully encourage me to take some more classes and do more drop-ins. I'd also like to start in Q2 progressive weightlifting again. I started a bit before the pandemic, but not since then. Skill 3 is graphic design. It's actually kind of hard to come up with new things to do with something that you are very experienced with, but there's always new things to be done. So Q1, it's been a while since I updated my socials and website and branding, so we're going to do that. And then Q2, I want to develop a merch line. I'm not sure if I would do clothing or stationery, but that's to be determined in the development process, so stick around for that. Skill 4 is illustration. This is probably the one I'm most excited about, since I'd like to switch a lot of my client work from graphic design to illustration. To show off my drawing style, I'm going to create a series of 6 pieces showing people riding public transit, and then eventually send a pitch deck to leads that I have who might be interested in this work. Skill 5 is plant identification. I'm going to take it easy on this one because all the plants are kind of dormant at the moment in Calgary. So we're just going to read some books on the topic, of which I have many. And then when the spring plants arrive, we can use iNaturalist app on hikes and walks around the city and maybe elsewhere. Before we wrap up, I thought I would share with you, my faithful viewers, a few plans I have for this very YouTube channel. So I have a plan to have, yet again, a list of 5 things. These are future playlists and categories of the kinds of videos I'm planning to create. We'll be continuing with the Popular Companies Coming series for cooking, as well as the Drawing Instruction series with new volumes. A few mysteries remain as to the rest of the images here. I don't think anything will be super surprising, but I want to keep experimenting and having fun on the channel with all of you. Hopefully you've found some use or inspiration for the systems that I've discussed, and of course I'll be using them going forward to implement all my plans and goals and dreams for here on out. So take care, everyone.